What is up, beautiful people? Welcome back to Nursing Basics. My name is Ronald. For those of you that aren't familiar here with this channel, it's new. Make sure you check out my other stuff. As promised, in this video, we're going to be talking about all this stuff right up in here. The PQRST, QT interval, PR interval, QRS complex, P wave, T wave, all that fun jazz. So make sure you stick around. Let's do this. Alright peeps, so we're going to talk about the basic ECG waveform. We're also going to talk about it with the model of the heart right next to it. That way you can correlate what's happening with which chambers of the heart and how that correlates to the P wave, QRS complex, and T wave. Those of you that know me in person, you'll know that my handwriting sucks, so you should be thankful because I had to try really hard to make this and it still doesn't look that good. I've also color coded them. Maybe that'll help you, maybe it won't. I hope it doesn't confuse you more. If you're red-green colorblind, I'm sorry, that sucks. We're going to get started with the P wave. The P wave is the first portion of the QRS complex. As I'm sure you can see, it's the first letter P, QRS, T. So, the P wave. The P wave represents the depolarization or contraction of the atria. The right and left atria are located right above the right and left ventricle, and these two little bad boys are responsible for pumping blood into the right and left ventricles. Also, an important thing to remember is that the atria are smaller, and they also have the help of gravity that's helping them pump blood down to the ventricles, so the contraction effort they have to put forth is not that strong. Okay, so after the P wave, the next portion of this strip is what is known as the PR interval. And this PR interval is measured from the beginning of the P wave, so right here, to the beginning of the QRS complex, right there. I've also labeled it right here. Now you may be wondering, what does this PR interval stand for? What does it mean? Well, I'm gonna tell you. So the PR interval represents the amount of time it takes for the electrical impulse from the SA node to travel to the AV node. If you need a refresher on the electrical conduction system of the heart, check out my video, link in the description. So something that's important to remember about the PR interval, this bad boy, is the time. A normal PR interval is anywhere from 0.12 to 0.20. I always just remember it as 12 to 20 and I put a 0 and a decimal before it. You better remember that.
It's important.
So after the PR interval, this bad boy, we move to what is known as the QRS complex. It's right here in blue. Now, if you remember, this P wave represented the depolarization or contraction of the atria, and we learned that the atria are not that big, so it's just a tiny little wave. And if you look at the QRS complex, it's the biggest, beefiest portion of this ECG waveform. And that's because the QRS complex represents the depolarization or contraction of the ventricles. So in comparison with the atria, the ventricles are much bigger because they have to pump blood way further away from the heart than the atria do. That's why on the ECG waveform, the depolarization of the atria is much smaller than the depolarization of the ventricles. Another important thing to remember about the QRS complex is the duration. A normal duration for a QRS complex is anywhere from 0.05 seconds to 0.12 seconds.
You better remember that too. It's also important.
After the QRS complex, we move to the ST segment right here. The ST segment is simple. It just represents the end of the depolarization of the ventricles and the beginning of the repolarization of the ventricles. So the beginning of the ST segment right here, the S, is when the ventricles are finishing their depolarization or contraction. And the end of this ST segment, or the beginning of the T wave, is when the repolarization of the ventricles begins. And this brings us to our final portion of the ECG waveform, the T wave. Now we just learned that the ST segment represents the end of depolarization and the beginning of repolarization. I know you're a smart cookie and you're thinking, well, if the ventricles just contracted, don't they need to charge back up again before they can contract again? Yes, that's exactly what's happening, and the ventricles, these bad boys, are now relaxing and charging back up, or repolarizing. Now, we have one last final interval that can be measured, and that is the QT interval, right here. QT interval. And that is measured from the beginning of the QRS complex to the end of the T wave. And the QT interval represents the entire amount of time it takes for the ventricles, these bad boys, to depolarize and repolarize. Well, there you go, peeps, you did it. I'm proud of you. You just learned about the basic ECG waveform, the PQRST, and how it correlates to the chambers of the heart. Make sure you keep an eye out for my next video. It's going to be over normal sinus rhythm, sinus brady, sinus tachycardia, and how to interpret a basic 6-second ECG strip. Don't forget to check out the Quizlet for this video, link in the description. Also, don't forget to kill the like button, murder the subscribe button. Please, I would appreciate it. And never forget the basics of life, guys. Be kind and do good. Peace out.